So well, you just went out and get yourself a nice sub-ohm tank. Awesome. Congratulations. Welcome to the world of big clouds. Cloud chasing, they love to call it. That brings me to my very first point. As you're using these things, maybe out in public, some folks, especially non-vapors, non-smokers, they might find that size of the cloud just a little bit surprising and possibly even offensive. So just make sure you do it smart and, try to respect their opinions as well. We don't want to have negative opinions anymore so than we already do. This is hopefully trying to help people, not create a greater divide between anybody. But in any case, so that's all I have to say on that subject. But in any case, welcome to the world of hopefully maybe even stepping up. But whether it's your first sub-ohm tank or you got a few in the rotation, there's probably just a few things that will help it work a little better for you. So try to touch on those in my typical rambling style, just sort of babble through it, but maybe try to work my way from bottom to top. So on the bottom you've got a battery, and that's the first thing that comes up is the resistance level of the tanks. It's significantly lower, which is part of how they increase their vapor production and able to handle more airflow and provide you with more power to the atomizer coil. Okay, totally lost my train of thought there. Woo, battery starting at the bottom. But the resistance level really low. You want to make sure that your battery or your mod or whatever you're putting it on is capable of handling that much resistance. And really what that does is increase your amperage or the current flow, the amount of electrons going through the system at any given time. And that it tends to generate a lot of heat. And some mods can have temperature protection on the boards to sense that amount of power travel, but some just, it's a little iffy. But in any case, just be aware that you're sending a lot more power than you would if you were using, say, a 1.5 or a 2 ohm atomizer like you would in some of the previous tanks are out there. So sub-ohming, that's exactly what it means. You've dropped it below the 1 ohm mark, which they used to refer to that as low-ohming, but now it's even gone further down. So sub-ohming. But in any case, the general principle is that you're getting more power flow through your battery, and so your battery needs to be able to handle that. Some mods even use 2 batteries to be able to provide even more power flow to the atomizer. But in any case, you can't just drop it on necessarily any old ego twist battery and off you go. It will just blink at you or tell you that that's not happening. So some of the older devices will have a threshold above what these sub-ohm tanks are coming in at, so they'll operate at too low of a power range. So just be aware that you do have to get a battery that's matched to that resistance level and capable of that. So moving on up, you got the base on them. A lot of them have started to add airflow control, the ability to open them up and get more airflow, or close them down and still kind of keep that tighter mouth to lung type experience that a little more traditional smoking was like. But to that end, the airflow control, when you get that much airflow, so the airflow control brings in a couple issues. One, of course, the ability to open it up gives you those nice big lung hits and big vapor production, but traditionally in these types of a tank, they used a little bit of the vacuum created by your draw to then draw in the next bit of e-juice to sort of saturate the wick and have it ready for the next puff. And so what happens is, as you get bigger and bigger airflow, you actually get less and less juice flow created by that vacuum. In fact, some of these tanks, I suspect there's no negative pressure. It's just relying on true contact to wick it through. But in some cases, as you open up your airflow real wide, you might find that you're not getting, what you'll run into is chain vaping. If you take a good long rip and your buddy says, oh, hey, let me check that out, and he takes a big long rip, by the end of his, it'll be dried out and kind of burnt, icky, but that is really a function of not having any negative pressure, any vacuum created, because your airflow is so wide open. And so you do need to be aware of that. And I personally like a more saturated vape. I think it actually helps the longevity of your coils and just enjoy the flavor more personally. So I try to make sure that I've got it, to where I can at least feel a little restrictiveness, so I know some juice is coming through, and you can actually even hear that. And if you're using temperature sensing devices, you can definitely see that in your performance. By that second or third chain vape, it will start temperature limiting almost immediately on firing. So all those things come into play, but it's really a function of the fact that the airflow just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger on these tanks, and so less and less negative pressure is being created to drain it, to pull in your e-juice. And even though they have bigger wicking channels, you can basically stuff the cotton right into the tanks on some of them. it still introduces the same series of problems, that there needs to be something, and if nothing else, it can actually work in the opposite effect. If you get any kind of siphoning going on, your wicking's not happening just so, it can actually pull that e-juice right out, and there's nothing to stop the whole tank from then just draining, because there's zero vacuum holding it in place, which is the traditional approach of a lot of RTAs or any tanks in general. So I would caution you that opening that airflow up is really fun, but if you start to feel yourself getting dry hits, or you're running it at higher power and you're just not feeling saturated, or your coil life is going down, those are all telltale symptoms that maybe it's time to just close it down just a bit, just kind of work it back until you can kind of feel it flowing again. And you'll know when you hit that spot. But again, bigger airflow doesn't always translate just to constant, steady performance. There's some trade-offs there, and these manufacturers, I don't think necessarily restrict you to a size that will always give you perfect performance. They just want to get a little bigger than the other guy, and so that's where we're kind of at now. You're getting 4 to 6 millimeter airflows on some of these, and again, I think they have 0 negative pressure when you're vaping. So, but any case, so that's the airflow ring. Moving up a little bit, usually hit some tank assembly and O-rings. Most of the tanks that I've seen out there are either glass or stainless steel, or Pyrex rather, which is borosilicate, I think is its technical name. But the materials are pretty decent, but if you run across anything with plastic or PPMA, obviously keep in mind that hot cinnamon flavors or citruses will crack a plastic tank traditionally, so those still kind of apply. So depending on what you pick up, just be aware of any materials in there that aren't necessarily, if you're using those type of liquids, aren't able to hold up to them. The other thing I would mention is the insulator materials. Different ones show up here and there, but if you're running a real crazy hot build, and some of these with the rebuildable sections, you can really push the envelope on them. But if you're running real hot, be aware that insulator material is still kind of one of your weak points. So don't burn everything up in the deck, just trying to get more and more and more. They do have a limit at some point. Now the differences between them, I'll let the models, the reviewers, other guys sort that out. But in general, it seems to be the airflow gives you more power that you can apply and achieve still kind of more or less a not burnt vape. And that seems to be what they're working, that upper threshold. There's not too much going on the flavor aspects, or the trying to maximize the power used. They're just trying to get more airflow versus the coil, so they can get higher and higher wattages and still achieve a stable vape. But in any case, the tank assembly is pretty straightforward. Usually just unscrewing the bottom will get you into the ability to fill it, but they're all a little bit different. Some have even added now a top fill, so that will continue to evolve. But when you're filling it up, it's I guess the only thing I would say is don't go too many fills without rinsing it out, and usually just taking it all apart, rinsing it in hot water is a real good idea. I would imagine some folks like to use vodka or alcohol. It helps if you're running some really crazy liquids, but in general, just hot water gets out most of the gunk. Just think of it like dried up Kool-Aid. That's essentially what you're trying to get out. So you leave it soak for a little while, it's gone. But do that every so often. Even if you use the same flavored juice over and over, it's just good hygiene, more so than anything for the atomizer particularly. But rinse them out, let them dry. I always also try to, when I reassemble them, especially after I've cleaned them, use a little e-juice on the O-rings, or there's probably glycerin or other things that you could use, but I've just used e-juice because it's sitting right there anyway. But get those rings a little bit lubricated. It'll help with their longevity. It'll help with assembling it. It just goes together better. It comes apart better the next time you take it apart. So a lot of folks just tend to throw them together and then feel like 2 seconds later their O-rings are leaking or they have problems, and surprise. So just pre-lubricate them a little bit, and that'll definitely help with their longevity. Moving up, the drip tip assembly, and in general the airflow, condensation. That as you get more vapor, you're exposing more and more surface area to this vapor production, and it likes to collect moisture, it likes to collect e-juice, and so as these areas get larger, you're going to have more condensation. So for myself, I find that almost every day, if not more than once a day, I have to get a little paper towel and kind of go through it all, and then it's fine, and it's not leaking per se, but a lot of folks mistake that for leaking, especially through the airflow assembly. And that's the other thing. If you do have your airflow closed down a little bit, don't overdraw it. Don't suck so hard that you're actually then sucking in e-juice, because it can't suck anything else in. If it's not air, if there's not enough airflow, it's going to suck in juice. So some folks really flood the heck out of it throughout the day and then let it sit, and by the next morning it's all drained back down into the only place it can go, into the airflow assembly usually. So it's just pouring out and go, oh, my tank's leaking. No, you're just sucking the heck out of it. So there's a lot of things that can play into it. In general, condensation definitely comes to play, especially when you start to get a half-inch drip tip or bigger. You're going to have just these massive surface areas. It's just a function of the diameter. It's the surface area increases exponentially, so it will have exponential condensation growth. So just keep that in mind. What I like to do at night is I just take my drip tip off and set it upside down on a paper towel and let it sit there. I don't bother taking the base off because I think moisture is maybe going to get in my juice. I don't know maybe if that's right or wrong, but then in the morning I always rip off that corner of the paper towel and clean out everything that's been building up in there. And then next morning, you know, I'll find again that it's pretty much built back up to that same level. So it's a fairly steady process of you fighting back and forth with it. But even if you ignore it for a couple days, you're going to build up a lot of stuff, and as you take a vape, you'll hear more gurgling, maybe get some juice in your mouth, but all that is just all that stuff built up that you need to periodically clean out, and all tanks do it. But as you increase the vapor flow, again, you will increase the condensation production and the surface area. So it's really a pretty steep ramp on that physics side anyways. But keep them cleaned out. Drip tips, most of them you can switch them around. And be aware that even though the top might be this big, the bottom's still only that big. Guess what she behaves like? So if you're afraid to switch it out or afraid it'll affect the performance, give it a try. Try sucking on it, taking it off the tank, sucking on your drip tip, sucking on the tank, whichever one's tighter, and then put it back together. You know, you can pretty quickly establish where your restrictions really are. But in most cases, these monstrous drip tips aren't still fact performing at the smallest point in the system, which is generally either their airflow tube or where that drip tip connects at the top of the tank. So, and don't be too worried about saying, this thing looks stupid, okay, switch it out. You won't lose a ton of performance or flavor in most cases unless you've got a really weird drip tip, in which case you probably knew that anyway. So that's probably about it. Obviously, coil maintenance on them. Some have a rebuildable, some have a just an exchangeable coil system, pre-made coils. Some are coming with the temperature sensing. I personally, going forward, wouldn't buy anything that doesn't have the option to use a rebuildable coil, simply from a dollars and cents standpoint and a customization standpoint. But wherever you're at, a lot of the tanks have both. It's a nice stepping stone if you're looking to get into the rebuildables and maybe not too comfortable with your skills. It gives you a great fallback plan. So I'd say keep that in mind as you're shopping, the ability to have that growth or go back to where you want, or just say I only want a rebuildable, in which case you maybe, want to pick up something more traditional, Orchid, Capon, whatever, blah, 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 name them now, Goliath below. But think about where you want to be on that rebuildable curve, because a lot of the, what you would call user tanks are now becoming rebuildables also. So that gives you a nice back and forth if you're kind of trying to work your way into it. Now, if you're just looking to go whole hog, again, you don't have to worry about the ability to ever use a replaceable coil. But each model seems to handle that a little bit differently. In general, they don't give you it with it. Kanger's the one that just, here you go, you want to build them yourself, it's already in the box. So that personally won me over. I've enjoyed the performance on it, but it's entirely personal, and which one you select will become even more complicated as more and more start to jump on the sub-ohm bandwagon. But again, to sum it up, vape safely. Know that your battery has to put out a lot of amperage, which means it has to handle low resistance at higher wattages. Be aware of the condensation, because that'll really build up. The coils themselves, I guess the other thing I wanted to mention is they do tend to last a little bit longer than what we use traditional coils, milliliter for milliliter, but you are producing more vapor, so therefore you're consuming more just raw e-liquid. So what used to be maybe a 4 mil a day world is almost turning into a 10 to 20 mil a day world for some folks, and fine, no, whatever, I'm not even going to judge that, but just keep that in mind when you're kind of budgeting for your coils, that all of a sudden that rebuildable starts to maybe get a little bit more entertaining when you think about the fact that you're consuming 5 to 20, 10 times the amount of e-liquid that you would have, say, before you slapped this baby on and cranked it wide open. Wow, look at that cloud. Whoa, wait, there goes your tank. So, and keep that in mind when you think about filling them. Some have easier methods, some hold more, all that can kind of play into your decision too, because you will be consuming a surprisingly larger amount than you were in a more traditional, again, 1.5 to 2 ohm coil. It heats up faster, produces more energy, so it can vaporize more liquid simultaneously before it's pulled down. So you know, whatever. But the trade-offs are all yours to make. I just want to make sure that you're, again, aware that they do consume a lot of juice. They condense more than normal. Most of the connections on them are really pretty sweet. The airflow control is almost standard equipment on all of them. Filling methods, totally up to you, whichever one you like better. Rebuildable, again, think about it if you want to go that route. If you're just completely happy using one right out of the box and just paying for that every once in a while, then I suppose that's it. Vape safe, y'all, and have a good one. Bye.